Yes, so nice to see everybody, and we're so glad to be here on this final Wednesday reflection of the year with stories of hope. And as Lisa mentioned, I'm the coordinator of creative initiatives. I always struggle with that with the IRI. I'm also myself an actor and a writer and a storyteller, and believe in the power of a good story. And we have used story quite a bit at the InterReligious Institute. If some of you have been paying attention in terms of our storytelling initiative. This fall, we did a voting series with people speaking about why they vote. Our podcast, Past and Present, work around stories. And so stories are, I think, a big part of how we connect and how we heal. And so we're really happy to have this time together. So, as we get ready to get near the end of this, as we approach the end of this, I'm going to just say it, unprecedented year, but I do believe that word should be banned in 2021. I am looking forward actually to living in a precedented time, if you can hear me, instead of all the unprecedents that we've been living in. But however, maybe the unprecedented should be around justice and equal rights and transformation. That would be nice to be living in those kind of unprecedented times. But regardless, we have, in these unprecedented times, decided to share stories of hope today, stories that are reflective of the year that we've had and the time that we find ourselves in, with the various political, racial, social unrest, upheavals here in the middle of this pandemic we find ourselves in. So we're grateful that you are here, and I'm going to ask you to listen and to participate as we go along in various ways. And yeah, having your cameras open is really helpful to the storytellers, because it is hard enough doing performing on Zoom. For those of you who know, it's hard to not be in the room with people. So it's really nice to at least see some faces. I wanted to just share a couple quotes and then get into the stories. So the first one is from Maxime Lagacé, who I thought was a philosopher, but turns out to be a Canadian hockey player. And Maxime says that it is because of hope that you suffer. And it is through hope that you'll change things. It is because of hope that you suffer, but it is through hope that you'll change things. Martin Luther King Jr. said, carve a tunnel of hope through the dark mountain of disappointment. Carve a tunnel of hope through the dark mountain of disappointment. And the Roman philosopher Seneca said, injustice never rules forever. And I like that one. Injustice never rules forever. So today we are very honored to be joined by 4 storytellers, Rohina Malik, Lisa Zook, you may know that name, Thayer, and Susan Stone. And just before we jump into it, I just want you to think about a couple things as you listen to the stories. And one is that, where is hope found in these stories for you, if it's found at all? Where is it found for you? And then what you recall or are reminded about in your own life when you're listening that you might share after our speakers. I'm going to ask for some folks to do some sharing. What? That's ridiculous. Too bad, I am. So I'm giving you a heads up now to start thinking. What is your own story of hope being alive in this moment of time that we find ourselves in? The writer Jeff Goins says, I believe in the power of story. Stories where we came from, stories where we're going, to each other. It is in the story of humanity, amongst love and fear and failure, that we make meaning of our lives. Story is what defines us and what sets us apart. It's also what allows us to truly know and be known. So on that, I'm going to introduce our first storyteller, Rohina Malik. Rohina Malik is a friend to the IRI and CTS. She's a familiar face to some of you. She was part of last year's IRI's public symposium, if you recall her. And we're very always happy to partner with Rohina. Rohina is a critically acclaimed and award-winning Chicago playwright, actress, and solo performance artist. She was born and raised in London, England, of South Asian heritage. And we're very honored to have Rohina with us today. Let's do some waves or claps or snaps or what have you to show Rohina some love. And Rohina, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Kim. Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to share a story with you today. Um, 2020 started out hard even before the pandemic for me. My father died in January, and it was really hard. One thing that gave me hope was that I knew in February I was going on an interfaith trip to Jerusalem. And I was so excited to go to the Holy Land, for Muslims, third holiest place in Islam, and to be there with my Jewish and Christian and Muslim brothers and sisters. And we went. And before I left, my mother kept going on and on and on about the pomegranate and saying, "You must drink the pomegranate seed juice." And she went on and on and on about this. And when I arrived and we started touring the country and going everywhere, I drank it, and it tasted different in every city. So in Tel Aviv, it was tart. And in Jerusalem, it was smooth with this like deep, just holiness in its taste. I can't describe it. It was different in Bethlehem, and it was super, super sweet in near the Dead Sea. And I just remember like how interesting it was that every city we went to, it was different. And as I was shopping in the Muslim quarter, I went into a store where I saw this ceramic pomegranate, and it was red and it was beautiful. And I was looking at it, and the store owner said, "Shake it." So I shook it, and I could hear, he said, "That's the seeds inside." And there were seeds inside. So I had to buy it for my mom. And we put it in her living room. And then March hit, and our lives changed. And the pandemic began, and the quarantine began, and I fell into a depression. Um, I was the kind of person that was flying all the time with gigs in my theater world and performances and just running around the rat race. My husband would have a 2-hour drive every day to work and back. My daughter had a 2-hour drive to high school and back. Um, it was crazy. And there I was sitting at home feeling depressed and sad and just completely disoriented. Like, this cannot be my life. I'm always on the go. How can I be stuck at home? But that time at home really gave me time to reflect. And if I'm going to be honest, I had to really look at what had happened to my family. And the truth was, my kids all had different schedules. They're all teenagers now, and we barely saw each other. My daughter would come home from school after doing school, then an after school activity like theater, and then she would come home and go straight to her bedroom and close her door and start her homework. So the youngest sisters never saw her, and they missed her. And my son, he's in university. We barely saw him. And then there was my marriage. My husband and I had become like two ships passing each other in the night, just passing each other by, because he was always flying. I'd get back from the airport and from a gig, and he'd be off to Portugal for work. And then he'd get back, and I'd be like, "Oh, great. Now you take care of the fort. I'm off to another city." And I'd leave, and then he'd come back, and then I'd leave. We had become so used to communicating to each other through email and text. And it was crazy. That's my husband. And I was communicating most of the time by email and text to my husband. As for family dinners, they were rare. And once in a while, in a Saturday, we might have a family dinner. But then during the pandemic, everything changed, and it took me time. It took Ramadan, where I couldn't go to the mosque like I normally could. I couldn't go to a million iftar parties like I normally could. I was at home with my family reflecting, and it really hit me that this rat race, this busyness was breaking us apart in a way. And I started to notice things. I started to notice that we were cooking in the kitchen together every single day. I noticed that we were having a family dinner every single day. I noticed that my daughters, who had become so disconnected and missed each other, were now dancing in the living room or making brownies in the kitchen or having a movie night. and their brother would join them, and the four of them would be laughing in the living room. And it had been a long time where I had seen that, and now I was seeing it all the time. And I realized that as painful as the pandemic has been on so many families, it forced my family to heal and to just be together and appreciate things that we took for granted, such as each other. And I'd go to Whole Foods or Trader Joe's and everyone's in masks, and I miss just that normalcy of sharing the air with other human beings. I missed it so much. And I began to think about, like, when things were normal, how I always wanted to have lots of dinner parties, inviting my musician friends and actor friends, and just have big dinner parties. And I was always too busy to do it. And now I longed for that. I long to be with the people I love. So the pandemic ended up being the healing that my family needed. And my mind is now thinking about the vaccine, and when we get back to normal, what will life be post-pandemic? And I know for a fact that I don't want to return to that crazy, disconnected, disjointed family. And I'm just going to make it my mission to make sure that when we return to normal, that I make an extra effort to make sure family dinner happens, not just once, but a few times in the week, and really put my foot down and make that happen and find time for us as a family, and not go back to the texting and the emailing, but connecting with my husband regularly, because this has been a huge wake-up call for me. And I want to end by saying that recently, when I was feeling a bit low, I went to my mom's apartment and I saw the pomegranate that I got in the Holy Land. And I looked at it and I shaked the seeds, and I thought about seeds, and I thought about what a pomegranate represents, which is abundance and fertility. And I thought about the seeds that I can plant for a post-pandemic life, and I have been filled with hope. I'm already planning that dinner party with the actors and musicians and all the people I love. I'm planning so many things. I have hope, and I want to live in a world where we appreciate each other and just sharing the air with each other. So I'd like to end my story with a poem by the beautiful Muslim Sufi poet Rumi. And Rumi says, "The morning wind spreads its fresh smell. We must get up and take that in, that air that lets us live. Breathe before it is gone." Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rohina. That was beautiful. Yes, we can show her some appreciation. Really beautiful. And also at the end of these, you're also welcome to unmute for a brief moment, and so she can, so the speakers can hear that as well. I love that idea. Oh, there it is. Yeah, do it. Yeah. Scared me. Yeah, I love that, sharing the air. That's such a beautiful, beautiful thought. And we are, in fact. Our next storyteller is our very own Lisa Zook, Chief Strategic Officer and Director of the IRI, and my friend, and also a wonderful writer and storyteller. I think that you will enjoy Lisa sharing her story today. Lisa, let's give Lisa a welcome. It's all yours.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Kim. I'm 20 miles from the North Carolina border, driving through the last winding stretch of the Tennessee mountains, less than 2 hours from Asheville. I really have to pee, but I shift in my seat and put my mind on other things, namely the gas gauge. My car tells me how many miles I can drive before I run out of gas, and it looks like I can make it there with a solid 40 miles to spare. I left my home in Chicago at 5 this morning, sweeping through the city before any morning traffic. I made it to Louisville, my halfway mark, by 10, crossed the river and stopped for gas. I don't want to be wasteful with disposable gloves, so I have a roll of doggy poop bags in my car, and I wear one like a glove when I'm pumping gas. Of course, with a mask, and making sure there is no one using the pump on the other side. Hand sanitizer awaits my return to the sanctity of my car. The challenge is finding a place to pee. I've discovered church parking lots work well for this, as the lots are often behind the building so you can't be seen from the road. I just open both doors on the driver's side and squat between them. I wear a skirt so I don't have to deal with pulling down my pants. I feel pretty proud of myself. The logistics and the bladder control. I just stop the one time right after getting gas. I limit my fluid intake, and I'm probably a bit dehydrated, but I just want to avoid any potential contact with someone else. It felt so weird this morning to be driving. It's such a normal thing, but I just don't go anywhere anymore. Not since March. I used to be a really confident driver, navigating Lakeshore Drive on my daily commute, weaving in and out of traffic without a second thought. Now I feel like I need an invitation just to change lanes. It's so ridiculous. I'm glad this last stretch of the drive is pretty much unpopulated. The traffic will stay light until I get to the city limits. Even though I'm less than 2 hours away, I still have the sense that this too will be canceled. This pandemic has robbed me of the joy of anticipation. I'm one of those people who loves to look forward to things. I count the days until vacation, until a family gathering, until a big milestone. So many milestones this year were canceled, including my wedding. A few things got moved to Zoom, but honestly, I can't bring myself to count down the days until a Zoom call, even when it's with my favorite people. Mostly, I just live with this pervasive sense that anything can be shut down at a moment's notice. I don't count on anything happening because it all just feels so precarious. It's hard to feel hope when the future is uncertain. I know this visit won't feel real until I step out of the car, run straight to the bathroom, pee, wash my hands thoroughly, and then finally pull my grandbaby into my arms, hug my daughter close, bury my face in that sweet baby smell. For now, I just focus on the logistics of getting there, primarily the state of my bladder, which is fuller than I'd like, and the state of my gas tank, which is lower than I'd like. The logistics started long before I got on the road today. For the past 2 weeks, Jake and I have not left our house except to walk the dog. It's not really that much different than any other time. We haven't been to a grocery store since March, a restaurant since February, a movie theater since January. We've only seen our closest friends a couple of times, always outside, never any hugs. But in the 2 weeks prior to my visits, we just eliminate any potential contact with anyone. I had a panic earlier this week because something went wrong with the kitchen sink and it started flooding. I was terrified that we would need a repair person. I was sobbing hysterically on the couch while Jake was crawling around under the sink looking for the issue. Thank God he was able to turn off the water. We sopped up the mess together, even though I couldn't stop crying. I watched in terror as he pulled out his toolbox, and then I cried tears of relief on his shoulder when it was fixed. So much crying over a kitchen sink. But a repair person in our home would make us have to start the 2 weeks again. It's already been 2 months since I last saw her, and I am desperate to be there. Not just to cuddle that sweet baby, but to support my daughter. New motherhood is hard, and so many support systems are completely impossible right now. She is struggling. I'm glad she talks to me about it, but I hate that all the ideas I have for her, new mom support groups, a massage, play dates with friends, a night out with her partner, none of that is possible. I feel like she needs me more than ever. I cross into North Carolina and my excitement feels like butterflies. These are such hard times and so many things are impossible. It's only now that I'm allowing myself to be excited for this visit, now less than 1 hour away. With each mile, I start to believe more and more that this will really happen. I feel this space inside me opening up. This space that I keep closed and guarded is now flooding my bloodstream with endorphins, sending pure energy into all my cells. I'm feeling elation and gratitude and just bursting with joy. I am driving and crying and laughing, and the music is blaring, and my sunroof is open, and the trees are beautiful, and the sunlight is glorious, and my heart has never felt this open. And I see the signs for the Asheville exits, and I know I'm almost there, and my tires are spinning, and I still have enough gas, and I can't even feel my bladder. And my God, I am grateful, and the universe is glorious. And who do I thank? I am not traditionally religious, but I am in this moment in utter awe and reverence that this world, this fucking COVID world, has yet made space for this.
Let's show some love to Lisa. Beautiful. That was a journey. Thank you for sharing that, Lisa. Sometimes the hardest thing is going from story to story, but we shall persevere. As long as I'm unmuted. Would be so sad if I was still muted. Oh, good. Our next storyteller goes by just the name Thayer. And Thayer describes himself as a spiritual creature stuck in a meat suit and doing the best he can with it. 3 overdose deaths from his active addiction led to his spiritual awakening and consequent quest to help heal others. A healer at his core, he has a degree in behavioral science and is a practitioner and a student of Qigong, and he's an empath. His passion is to become a speaker and a spiritual teacher because, as he says, spiritual awakenings suck. So without further ado, please let's welcome Thayer.
Hey everybody, my name is Thayer. Thank you for having me. To be honest, I walked away a little bit to get some coffee and you were introducing me. I heard it and I said, I better run back. Thank God for good speakers, you know, and so I haven't told a story or performed, actually even had human contact in quite some time. So pardon me for some of the shaky nerves, but I've already gained some hope from listening to the storytellers before me, and just even seeing your bright faces. You know, it reminds me of the waiting room at Cook County Hospital. And it started with just going to get sushi. And I went to get sushi with my wife and Angelica. And there was lots and lots of rain that day. It was Saturday night and it was really dark, and there was like an incredible static in the air. There was an incredible anxiousness in the air. There was anxiety. There was let's not goes and let's stay and let's watch Netflixes, but we still went anyway. Then when I pulled up on Chicago Avenue and Hermitage, I saw the cars flash by like they always do on Chicago Avenue. And I practiced the same awareness that I always do parking in the city. And I pulled over and let Lola and Angelica go get us the table. And I began to pull the car away. And it wasn't a feeling, and it wasn't a thought, it was a voice that said, stop. Make sure Lola gets into the car, into the restaurant okay. She's gonna be hit by a car, be careful. And I looked and they were already in the restaurant. So immediately I went into, like, maybe because of my recovery, or maybe there was like some sort of drug recall or something, but it's already been, you know, over a decade that I've been clean. So it couldn't be that. But either way, I said, well, whatever. And I drove away and I parked the car and I began to walk back to the restaurant. Now, for whatever reason, from wherever this came from, I actually stopped and leaned against the wall of, one of those Chicago buildings, because I remember the smell of rain hitting the ground and the dust that kind of flickers off the brick buildings in the city. And I put my head there for like what seemed to be a lifetime. And I just couldn't figure out why I was doing that. So when I came back I began to walk back. And so when I started to cross the street, I got the call from Angelica. And Angelica said, "Hey, T, where are you at?" I said, "I'm right here. You can't see me? Hello, I'm right here." She said, "Hurry, hurry, Lola's been hit by a car." And I was in more shock than readiness, because I just saw you guys in the restaurant, I'm thinking. And so then my walk that was originally staggered carelessness type of nonchalance became a brisk walk. And then when I saw the body, it became a run. And then I entered into what I call like a twilight zone, where things began to sound like and I just remember thinking I should act like the people that I see in the movies. "Come on, honey, wake up, wake up." And it was like she was in a movie, because all I could see was one drop of blood by her nose and her head by the bumper, by the curb. It all seemed very like staged. But then something took over, a power not my own. Even though they had called her dead, the Chicago cops, the Chicago ambulance guys that, for all practical purposes, didn't want to do any work, maybe. I don't know. But I made them. And I said, "Get her body, let's go. And take us to the closest hospital." They said, "Cook County Hospital." I said, no, we have insurance. Let's go to Northwestern." He said, no, you want to go to Cook County. I said, no, I don't want to go to Cook County. He said, "That's where you want to go." So we went to Cook County, and then it became like a Grey's Anatomy scene. Voices and jargon and doors and big signs that say, "Do not enter, patient surgery, ICU, CEU," all these letters and like just a bunch of initials. And a bunch of doctors that looked like they were, it's supposed to be a movie. And I entered with her. And then I looked, and her eyes were hanging outside of her head. And I just couldn't believe that a God of my understanding could create this. And so then the spiritual battle began. And for me, hope is created by the strength from my experiences. So I'm not afraid of COVID, because I just know too well that life can change at any moment, at any time, even if you're just getting sushi. And so she went into a coma, and I began that holiday season. It was December 18th that this happened, on her birthday. And we went into that holiday season at Cook County Hospital, and it seemed like I was the only one there. It seemed like everybody had made it or died on our unit. More died. We were on the gang violence ICU unit at Cook County Hospital, where all of the gangland Midwest, not just Illinois, but all the gangland violence that would happen would be brought there. And I sat in that waiting room, and I walked the halls of Cook County Hospital, and the aura of pain and suffering and county building and brick and mortar and loneliness, and the very slightest clicking of your shoe would like resonate through the entire hallway. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. The government aluminum chairs, the government workers, and I just paced and walked, and there was this waiting room where all the homeless people would come to warm up. And I sat in that waiting room and I found myself best friends with the homeless population of Chicago. Now, I too was homeless in my active addiction. So it wasn't new to me to watch the nod and the slurp and the sheer enjoyment of misery, where misery becomes your comfort. I remember that. And I sat there and there was one particular guy who had tattooed 666 in the middle of his forehead. And he had a voice like this, and he was always upset, and he was like, you motherfucker, you ain't gonna motherfucking. And he always walked with a half nod and a half confidence that was like the best thing I've ever seen. The guy was so confident about being mean. But then there was this other guy named Michael. And Michael came in with your quintessential typical cap or the beanie and the army green coat. But he didn't walk with a nod, and he didn't have a slurp, a drip, or a drool. He had green eyes and a beautiful smell because he came up to me and hugged me. He said, man, I see you here every day, man. What's going on with you? Oh, man, my wife got hit by a car. Man, T, she gonna be all right, man. That's what he would say to me. Every morning he would come in and say that to me. And eventually I said, Michael, come here, man. Let me buy you something to eat, man. No, man, I'm all right, man. Every day he would say, no, man, I'm all right. I don't need, I'm like, here's $100, man. I was so grateful for the hug that he gave me every morning that I just wanted to give this guy some money or some food I just wanted to help fix his life, but he didn't need fixing. Little did I know that he was here to help me. And Michael every day would watch me sit in this waiting room. And eventually I told him about my recovery. And eventually I told him, man, I hope I can stay clean through this, man. And I look up and the clicking and the clicking and the clicking in the hallways led to a man named Lewis. And Lewis was there at my first meeting ever in life when I came out of treatment. And Lewis was an old Vietnam era veteran from Cicero. And at my first meeting, he says, man, T, you always got to remember, man, your recovery must come first. And that everything else possible. That's what he would say to me. And I never forget the way he talked. And the clicking and the clicking and the clacking in that hallway led to Lewis at that moment when I sat with Michael at my lowest, hoping that my recovery would just stay intact. He said, T, what you doing here, man? I said, oh my God, Lewis, man, I can't believe, I'm so grateful. Oh my God, man, I'm having my wife. Man, T, don't never, ever, ever forget your recovery must come first, man. Wow, thank you, Lewis. That really came right on time, man. It gave me just a little bit more to go a little bit longer and continue my fight with not only the demonic homeless guy who was in my ear yelling and screaming and telling me how hopeless and how nasty life is, but with Michael and the other, telling me it's gonna be all right, man. It became no longer a human experience. It was only in my head at the time. I thought I was living in some movie, some 80s era Christmas movie where I was stuck in purgatory or something. And it wasn't human, and it wasn't even about Lola anymore. It was about my dark night of the soul. And I argued and fought with these doctors to not pull the plug ever. Don't ever pull the plug. She's gonna wake up, she's gonna wake up, she's gonna be all right, she's gonna wake up, she's gonna be all right. In no possible way, sir. Can you please sign here for her organs? No, she's not dead yet. Why? Why would I sign? Wait, is she dead? Well, almost. Well, that almost isn't dead. And in the back of my mind, I said, besides, Michael said it was gonna be all right. Now, all of the things that I came from, All of the money and the property and prestige came down to one single word from a homeless guy named Michael. And I don't know to this day why, but whenever he talked to me, and it's not like I ever knew about Archangel Michael before. I don't think I remember having any knowledge. I think maybe I've heard of Archangel Michael, but I don't remember having any solid knowledge of him. But that day when he walked out, I walked with him and, you know, tried to buy him some food again, and he wouldn't let me. And on the floor, there was a card that said Archangel Michael. I don't know what or where it came from, but he went away. I picked up the card and I looked at him to see, and it was really like a movie. I couldn't see him anymore. It's like he disappeared. I'm sure there's some physical explanation as to where he went and where he walked to, but to me, it's not what happened, it's how I process what happened. And I can't prove to anybody that anybody else ever saw this man, Michael. And somebody once asked me, how many angels do you come across a day? I said, well, I don't know, maybe none. I never seen any wings. It's, well, can you ever prove that anybody ever saw that man, Michael, other than you? Had you ever talked to anybody else? I said, no, but it can't be. I said, what, he was where? No, no, no. And when I think about it, there was never any interaction between me, him, and another person that I can think of. And then I began to start researching the Archangel Michael. And then I went upstairs to Dr. Nagi's office. And Dr. Nagi told me, Thayer, we really got to start making some decisions here. Now, I came up with a bunch of hope and a bunch of like, Lewis just came in from nowhere and I'm going to stay clean and she's going to live to, sir, she's got 5 catastrophic traumatic brain injuries. She's just not going to come back. Our science says ... I said, I don't care about your science. God gave you your science and she's going to wake up. And we began a walk to her room so she can tell me some more bad news. And we got to Lola's room. And I'm not making this up. The doctor was facing me and I was facing the room. And I looked over her shoulder as she's giving me science. And Lola was up, laughing with the nurses. Her eyes were taped to her head. The life support system was still on. She was in diapers. She was held down by, restraints because a traumatic brain injury is like waking up really, really drunk. But she was awake. And Dr. Nagi turned around and said, well, you know what? Can you go back to the waiting room? We'll come and get you when we're ready. And I said, yes, I'll go back to that waiting room. And she woke up.
Thank you, Thayer. Thank you so much. Let's show Thayer some love. Thank you so much for sharing that powerful story. Whew. Our final storyteller is Susan Stone. Susan is an award-winning teaching artist and storyteller for adults as well as for children for over 30 years, performing all over the country as well as in Poland in museums, synagogues, folk festivals, and schools. She's also the Jewish part of an interfaith storytelling group with a Muslim and a Christian woman called Sisters of Story. I know something about that, bringing light to a darkened world. Please welcome, if you will, our final storyteller, Susan Stone.
There we go. Hi, thank you, Kim. Thank you for asking me. And hello, everybody. I'm going to ask you at the end of my story if you would unmute, unless you're like brushing your teeth or sawing some wood or your dog is barking. So just stay tuned for that. Because I need to hear that response. I so appreciate the former 3 storytellers. Really beautiful. It touched my soul. I'm going to move in a little different direction. When I decided to tell this story, I thought about the good that humor does in the area of hope. So not knowing anything about it, I looked it up, and forgive me for reading this, but a couple quotes about humor and hope. Laughter might be the best medicine for transforming the faintest of glimmers of hope into an eternal spring. And that's from Texas A&M University. And it shows that humor may significantly increase a person's level of hope. Lastly, and secondly, from the International Journal of Humor Research, I'm sure all of you have read that, it has been empirically demonstrated that humor can positively affect psychological and physical well-being, and that sense of humor is a major component in high hope individuals. And we all know that because when we laugh, we feel better. So I hope my story gives you even more hope. It takes place in a little Eastern European village. And it was the month of Kislev. And the story is based on a book called In the Month of Kislev by Nina Jaffe, and I've adapted it. It was the month of Kislev, the Hebrew month, which we're in now, and the snow covered everything. All of the houses were getting ready, the children in the houses, to play dreidel because it was Hanukkah. And they were getting ready to win some Hanukkah geld, coins, when the children would play dreidel. And everyone was getting ready to eat huge plates of latkes, which you'll just have to imagine right there. You see it? Okay. I don't have any. Trader Joe's are really good, by the way. And everyone was so excited. It was Hanukkah, except for the people in Mendel the peddler's house. Mendel had no hope. His children had no hope. And his wife Rivka had no hope. They were very poor. Mendel was a peddler. He would push his cart down the street, and they barely had one potato for latkes. Down the road from him was a rich lumber merchant named Feivel. Feivel didn't have to push his cart down the street. He had a big wagon and 4 horses to pull it. And his wife didn't have to cook and clean like Rivka. She had many servants to do the work. Now, it was the first night of Hanukkah. Mendel took his 3 daughters to the synagogue, and on their way back, they passed by Feivel's huge mansion. And there, on the windowsill, someone, the cook, had put a big plate of potato latkes to cool. Oh, it smelled so good. If you've ever walked into a house with something frying, that's how it smelled. And the children smelled it, and they went home, and they each had a tiny piece of latke, and they went to sleep. Mendel and Rivka went into their room, and they said to themselves, "Why are the children smiling? They went to bed hungry." But you see, the smell of the latkes was almost like eating an entire meal. Well, you know Hanukkah is 8 nights. That happened the first night, and the second, and the third, and the fourth, and the 5th, and the 6th, and every night they went past the window and smelled the delicious latkes. But on the 7th night, when they went to smell the latkes, the cook was there, and she said, "Get away from here, beggar children. Master, mistress, these beggar children are stealing the smell of your latkes." Well, the very next day, you know what happened. Feivel the lumber merchant, the rich man, the miser, he asked to see the rabbi, and the rabbi met with Feivel and Mendel. "So, Feivel, you say this man's children has been stealing the smell of your latkes." "Yes," said Feivel, "and he should pay." "What do you want him to pay?" said the rabbi. "He should pay 1 ruble for every night of Hanukkah," said Feivel. 8 rubles? Where was Feivel going to get 8? Where was Mendel going to get 8 rubles? And all the townspeople were listening in at the window. And then the rabbi did something very strange. And I'm going to ask everyone to unmute themselves for a minute. If you don't mind, you don't have to. The rabbi walked out of the door, and he said to the townspeople, "Our friend Mendel has a big problem. Please give tzedakah, give charity." And he opened up a little bag, and he passed it around. And everyone put in a kopeck or a ruble, whatever they could give. And then the rabbi stood in the door and said, "Feivel." And he began to shake the bag. You can hear that, I hope. And he shook the bag and he shook the bag, and then he turned to Feivel and he said, "Feivel, the sound of the Hanukkah gelt has paid for the smell of your latkes. Go home. Go home and do good." That's what happened. Feivel, the very next day, on the 8th day of Hanukkah, he and his family took plates of latkes and big blankets and warm soup to Mendel's house. It was the best Hanukkah they ever had. And they did that every night of their lives for every Hanukkah, except for one thing. Feivel had an even better idea. He gave Mendel a job in his lumber mill, and Mendel never had to go hungry again. Because, you know, on Maimonides' ladder of tzedakah, of charity, the highest hope you can give a person is to give them self-sufficiency. And that's what Feivel did. And that's the story of In the Month of Kislev. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Wonderful, Susan. Thank you so much for sharing that delightful story. I would just love, in our remaining time before I pass it back to President Ray, first of all, to thank the 4 storytellers so much for sharing pieces of themselves. And I would just love for you to either unmute yourself or throw in the chat some reflections, responses, what resonated with you from any of the 4 storytellers. Would just love to hear some feedback. So if you'd like to unmute yourself or go ahead and throw it in the chat, either way. What resonated? What reflections do you have after listening, after experiencing the past hour? Responses?